Welcome back. All right, another season preview for all you fine people on the internet. And now we discuss the Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers, a team that faced some of the very same questions we've been asking with this team for a while. Is there enough depth up front? Will the goaltending hold up when it needs to? And I know for Oiler fans, it's usually one of those eye-rolling things of we've been discussing this for years. Can we find something else to talk about? The reality is it is still a question mark, as they failed in the final both years against Florida, and Florida's depth definitely outperformed the depth of the Edmonton Oilers, and you could make the statement that Florida's depth outperformed everybody they played this past spring, but it ended with the Oilers, and so the questions are still out there. Now, looking at their top 6, Nugent Hopkins is always the one interesting for me with the Oilers. I think he's better at center than on the wing. I know he can play both, so he very likely ends up on a wing on the top 6 line. And you've got enough depth down the middle that, yeah, you can have him on the wing. But I'd prefer to see him down the middle because McDavid, Draisaitl, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, I've discussed it before. I think that's a trio down the middle that few teams could match up with, if anybody. So you've got Nugent-Hopkins, you've got McDavid, and Zach Hyman. They missed Zach Hyman during that run to the final. It definitely makes a difference to have him in the lineup rather than not. He still had 27 goals this past season. Now, one of the big question marks is Vasily Podkolzin. I've seen him picked as a breakout candidate. I believe the NHL site themselves picked him as a breakout candidate for the Oilers. And I'm not sure. I think that Podkolzin is a very hard worker. I think that's why Canuck fans were upset when he was traded out. Because he's a very hard worker. He's a good player. But the offensive upside, I'm not sure how much is still there. And I'm not sure if Podkolzin's ever going to be a 20-plus goal scorer. He definitely has the effort. He is a heart and soul player. I just don't know if the finish is there. And so while he's in the top 6, there are a couple I'll discuss in the bottom 6 who might force their way into that conversation if Podkolzin's finish isn't quite where you want it to be for a top 6 player. Draisaitl, of course, number 2 center at times on a line with McDavid as well. And Mangiapane being added to this team, looking to have a sort of a bounce back from a down year statistically with the Caps. And I think that Mangiapane could get there. So it's a good top 6. I think that with Draisaitl and McDavid, it becomes a great top 6 overall. But the questions are still going to be out there with this team. Now, the bottom 6, you have Trent Frederick, who will be given an opportunity to get top 6 minutes, I would think. Henrique and Savoy. Matthew Savoy might be the one to watch. I have him picked as the one to watch. You guys can ask me, or you guys can tell me who you think's the one to watch, whether it's him or Podkolzin. I think it's between the two. But Savoy is going to be given an opportunity to get that ice time as well. A top draft pick of the Buffalo Sabres not too long ago, when they traded for him, clearly the envisioning they had was that he could turn into a top 6 forward for them. Isaac Howard being acquired from Tampa, I think we'll get an opportunity to play as well. Keep an eye on preseason. I think we'll see Howard and Savoy get plenty of ice time so the Oilers can figure out which one of the two is better suited to maybe getting a look in that top 6. Just a look, not necessarily a lot. Like if Mangiapane's on the 3rd line, that's not bad either. So we'll see what happens. Then you got Janmark, you got Kapanen finishing things out there. And rounding is the word I was looking for. Totally escaped me. Janmark and Kapanen, both strictly bottom 6 forwards. And yeah, so good depth there. Now you have Lazar. You have Tomaszek as well, who's come in. He's going to play. Philp could get into some games. You have Jones still. Some good depth here. Hamblin. Yarventi is still on the list. Szymanski, Petrov, Stonehouse. And if you live in a stone house, you're allowed to throw stones. There you go. Hudson, not that Hudson. Mariala and Gruby as well. So the depth up front is not too shabby. I think that the Oilers are going to remain a strong playoff team, and so does the channel. But we'll get to the vote in a bit. I want to talk about the defense first. The defense is much maligned by some, based on a couple, but this is a good, solid defensive group. Starting with Ekholm. I love Ekholm's game if he stays healthy. That helps the Oilers right away. Bouchard, excellent offensive defenseman, whose defense gets talked about. And I've mentioned how when there's turnovers, sometimes it's just at the worst possible time. But I think he's better defensively than he gets credit for. Nurse, Wallman, likely rounding out the top 4, although Kulak's coming off of a really strong season statistically. And Ty Emberson looked good as a top 6 defenseman for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, depth-wise, you have Stetcher. We know Stetcher's comfortable in that number 7 role. Brown, Stillman came in during the offseason from Carolina. Dineen, Aki is seen as a good prospect for these Oilers. Might get a couple of games in this year. Regula, which always reminds me of Regula 1 from Star Trek Wrath of Khan. And Lepinen here as well. So the depth on the blue line, not too shabby. I think that's good enough. And so it's a matter of, is it going to be the best in the division? It probably comes down to Vegas and Edmonton for the division this year yet again. I would think that's likely. Recency bias is a thing. I fully admit, recency bias is a thing. It's part of the reason that I started having a channel vote every year, because I would do like my predictions and it'd be a lot of, this is all recency bias. But these show that recency bias is just how people see things. It's only been a few months since the season ended. Regular season ends in April. It's now August. You don't look and go, well, this team's totally different than they were 4 months ago. And yet when the games start in October, things can be quite different. Now, the goaltending. Skinner and Pickard, they're not as bad as some would think. And I think sometimes it's an overrated tandem on the Oilers fan side as well. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing either way. I think the fact that this is a conversation all the time around the Oilers is kind of interesting. I can't recall a team that has been to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals, that has been seen as a contender for this long, that has had questions around the goaltending that are as loud as they are around the Oilers. Tompkins has been added. Of course, he was a Tampa Bay farmhand, got into some games for them at one point. Unger projects as the number 4 in the organization in net. So the MVP is clearly going to be McDavid. This team will go as far as McDavid will take them. And this year, the motivation for McDavid is his contract is up July the 1st. So if he wants to get a big payday, he doesn't have to do anything. He's Connor McDavid. He could go out there and score nothing in 20 games and still get paid big money. He is one of those few players that, contract year or not, it's not really going to affect their income. I think we're going to see some big money handed to McDavid. It's a matter of when. I know the Oilers want this done quickly, but there's no pressure on McDavid. I always find this interesting. Like, for unrestricted free agents, there's no pressure. For restricted free agents, you can argue that it's there, because if you get into the summer and they're not signed, and if they don't have arbitration rights and nobody's given them an offer sheet, they just kind of sit there. Unrestricted free agents, no. Worst case scenario for McDavid is he doesn't get a contract signed, and he goes to the free agent market on July 1st and gets $11 billion from everybody, because everybody's going to want to sign him, and I think it would go to league maximum pretty quickly. You want to see the first $20 million hockey player? I think McDavid could get there, but my prediction is he does re-sign with the Oilers. We do not see him hit the market next summer. So cap hit? No. Or cap space, I should say, and it's still a no. $225,834, according to Puckpedia. They did trade out Evander Kane, which gave them a little bit more cap space, but they have spent that, and so they do not have cap space currently. What you see with the Oilers is likely what you're going to get. This is why they were one of the first teams I talked about during the summer, because they just don't have cap space to make moves. Now, their schedule is kind of mean the first couple of months. In October, 7 of 12 games are away from home. If any of these numbers are wrong, it's the entertainment guy. Go over to his channel and complain. And then November is brutal. 10 out of 14 games on the road. So if the Oilers are going to avoid a slow start, they have to be good on the road. And the Oilers in back-to-back seasons have had slow starts. So it is something to be aware of. But based on the fact they went to the Stanley Cup final both years, slow starts don't really affect them. Now, after that, their schedule gets a lot more friendly, in that in December, 8 out of 15 games are at home, and in January, 11 of 15 games are at home. The unfriendly part is that's 30 hockey games between December and January. This year's schedule is brutal. I didn't get into back-to-backs. I didn't get into 3 games in 4 nights, because honestly, everybody has a really, really tough schedule. In February, 4 out of their 5 games are away from home. So, of course, that's where the Olympic break resides. In March, 8 out of 14 are at home. So, March and April where they have 4 out of 7 at home, mean that 12 of their last 21 games are at home. So, if the Oilers do well at home, but if they struggle on the road, we might see a record that's not great by the end of November, and then it gets better as the rest of the season goes along. because they have a lot more games at home going forward. So that'll be one thing to keep an eye on. Now, since 2021-2022, their overall record in the NHL sits 7th at 196 wins, 106 regulation losses, and 26 losses in extra time. So top 10 team there. Their scorers during that time, not really a surprise anywhere in this top 5. Connor McDavid's number 1? You don't say. 305 games, 166 goals, 342 assists, more than an assist per game, 508 points. Leon Draisaitl, 312 games played, 200 goals, so that's impressive. 250 assists, 450 points. A lot of respect for the fact those numbers are even numbers. I love that. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, 303 games played, 86 goals, 184 assists, 270 points. Zach Hyman, 308 games played, 144 goals, 114 assists for 258 points. And then Evan Bouchard, 326 games, 52 goals, 180 assists for 232 points. Do not make a drinking game out of the amount of times Jack Michael says "boosh bomb" when you're watching an Oilers game. You'll end up in the hospital. So the top prospects, really the Oilers at this point, if you're looking at prospects, Savoy and Howard, I guess, would qualify. And there's some others in this list here that might qualify as prospects. I put Berezkin as the one prospect of note for the Edmonton Oilers. They're in win-now mode. So this is not a team that's got a lot of really good young players pushing their way into the lineup. This is a team that's looking to win immediately. And you want to do that especially with your star player, your captain, one of the best players in the NHL, if not the best player in the NHL, on an expiring contract. So their record this past season was 48, 29, and 5. They end up with a strong record despite the slow start that they had. Their scoring leaders this season only. Draisaitl led the way. 71 games, 52 goals, 54 assists for 106 points. Draisaitl's fantastic. McDavid, 67 games, 26 goals, 74 assists for 100 points. And you can look at that and say, that's a bit of a down year for McDavid, because it is, which tells you how ridiculous McDavid's scoring has traditionally been. I had the same kind of experience when I was looking at Kucherov's numbers. When I was looking at wingers and all this, and I was like, oh, was Kucherov, was he scoring too much this year? Nah, actually, that's right about in line. And McDavid and Kucherov are two players that have shown they can get a ton of assists and a ton of points overall. So when they have a poor season, it's still a great season for almost anybody else. Now, their goaltending, yes. Skinner and Pickard played almost every minute this past season. Skinner, 26-18-4 with an .896 save percentage. Pickard, 22-10-1 with a .900 save percentage. Olivier Rodrigue, who is signed in the KHL, he had a record of 0-1 with an .862 save percentage. So he was in the Edmonton system for a long time, and it just didn't quite work out for him. So hopefully he gets his game going overseas and comes back over here and gets himself an NHL job at a later date. So looking at the last 5 playoffs, the last 4 years, the Oilers have been defeated by the team that went on to win the Stanley Cup. So I guess that's some solace for them. But 2021, they lost in the first round in 4 straight against Winnipeg. There were some comments about that when that took place, about the Oilers. Now they weren't any good, yada, 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 which of course was not true. 2022, they lost in the conference final in Colorado. That was also in 4 games straight. In 2023, they lost in the second round against Vegas. That took 6 games. And then, of course, the last 2 years, they've lost in the Stanley Cup final, both times against Florida. In 2024, it took 7 games, and in 2025, it took 6 games for Florida to dispatch the Edmonton Oilers and kind of break Connor McDavid's spirit a little bit. You could see it in both losses. McDavid desperately wanted those Stanley Cups, did not get them. You have to think that's in the back of his mind when he's looking at a new contract. If he believes in the Oilers, and I think he does, that helps their chances. I think that the fact that it's unfinished business could very well lead to a long-term extension for McDavid with the Edmonton Oilers. Now, looking at their power play this past season, surprisingly average, 23.7%, which is 12th overall. Their penalty kill, 78.2%, that's 16th overall. Their goals for, 3.16 per game, that was 11th in the National Hockey League. Their goals against, 2.87 per game, which is 14th. So one thing for the Oilers is this is a team that is kind of middle of the pack in a lot of areas where you would expect them to be better. Now, the slow starts are part of that, and very hot and cold team. Getting hot at the right time is important. but the expectations this year are pretty high. So the channel vote went 65% say first or second in the National Hockey League's Pacific Division. There you go. Third or fourth, 30% say third or fourth for the Edmonton Oilers. I'm guessing those are people who believe that the Vegas Golden Knights are going to be better than them, and maybe the LA Kings, right, who now have Corey Perry. Fifth or sixth, 2% say fifth or sixth, and 3% of the channel say they're seventh or eighth. I'm guessing those are fans of the Leafs. Probably some Canuck fans voted 3% in favor of seventh or eighth, and just some other people who want to troll. You're always going to have that troll vote. It's always going to be there. So I'm aware that there's never going to be a time where there's 0% in one area for something. But yeah, this season I think is a big one for the Edmonton Oilers. I do expect them to still be in contention for first, if not first in the division. And overall, this is a team that is going to be very difficult to play against for teams in the West. I guess the one question mark that I would have is, can this team win that big game in June and hold up the Stanley Cup at the end of all of it? Or is there still other work to be done? Is it the defense? Is it the goaltending? Is it the offense? Let me know your thoughts. I think this is a really good team that, yes, there are some flaws you could point out here and there, but those flaws should not prevent the Edmonton Oilers from still being at least top two in the Pacific Division. But that being said, I'd be interested to know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. I will talk to you again soon.